This is section 1.4, and we're talking about complex numbers. A complex number has a real part and an imaginary part. If I show you this, a plus bi, how do I know what the real part is? Doesn't have an I. What does the imaginary part have? An I. Do you guys see that? So if I had 3 plus 4i, and I said, what is the real part? 3. What's the imaginary part? 4i. If I had 2 minus 6i, what's the real part? What's the imaginary part? What kind of 6i? Negative, right? So this is the imaginary. This is the real. This is written in standard form, meaning the real part comes first. The real part has to come first. So if you have something like this, if you had a question that said, what is the square root of -1? You would tell me it equals what letter? I. Okay? If I have I squared, I know this is a review, what does I squared equal?
1.
What kind of 1? -1. So if you had something like this, if you had a problem and you came out with, as soon as you see I squared, this is what I want you to do. I want you to cross it out and then change the sign in front. Because if I have 4 minus 10i squared, well, what did you guys just tell me I squared equals? -1. So if I have a -10 times a -1, what does that give me? Positive 10. So every time you see I squared, you're going to see that with multiplication, you want to cross off the I squared and change the sign in front of that number. You guys with me? How many of you remember this from Algebra 2?
Yeah.
Remember seeing it at least?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good.
Why did that say as a positive 10?
It was negative. It was 4 minus. So this and then this. We'll do. This is going to be one question examples. All right, so here, guys, this is just recognizing the real and the imaginary parts. You will have a question on your test like this. Please don't get this wrong. What is the real part of A?
3.
Okay, so real is 3. What's the imaginary part?
4.
4 what?
5.
Okay. What's the real part here? 1/2. What's the imaginary part?
-2.
-2/3 I. Good. What's the real part here? What is it? 0. Good. What's the imaginary part? 6i. Good. All right, guys, look. In D, what is the real part? -7. What's the imaginary part? 0. When you write it in standard form, what comes first, real or imaginary? Good. Okay. When we are adding and subtracting and multiplying, I'm going to just leave this here. This is the same thing as adding and subtracting or multiplying like terms. Real goes with real, imaginary goes with imaginary. I squared equals -1. So let's do some problems. Whoa.
Basically, that's one part of it.
First thing you want to do in this case is to look what they're asking you to do. This is not a multiplication problem, guys. What are they asking me to do? Add. So, like terms, real goes with real, imaginary goes with. So 3 plus 4, 7. 5i minus 2i plus 3i. That's it. Can I simplify that anymore? No. What's the real part? What's the imaginary part? Perfect. Is that ridiculously hard? No, you guys can handle it. Okay. What about here?
-1.
What about -1?
That's the real number.
Well, hang on one second. What do I have to do first? I have to distribute that negative sign, right? So this is really 3 plus 5i minus 4 plus 2i. Questions on how I got that? Wait, what? See that negative out in front?
Yeah.
Distribute it. Okay, so I have 3 minus 4 is what, Jimmy? -1, good. And then I have a positive 5 and a positive 2i. Plus 7i, perfect. Is that written in standard form? Is the real number first? Yeah. Okay, so real's first, imaginary second. Good. All right, what do they ask me to do here? Multiply. How do you know it's multiplication? There's no sign in between. They're just stuck together. Good. So just FOIL this, guys. What's 3 times 4? 12. What's 3 times -2i? Good. What's 5i times 4? Good. And then what's negative 5i and negative 2i? Negative 10i. As soon as you see I squared, what do? Cross it off, change the sign. You don't automatically add. You have to cross it off and change the sign in front. When you guys are foiling, every single time should work out the same way, that your reals end up being on the outside and your imaginary on the inside. Every single time. So I have 12 plus 10, which is 2. What's negative 6 plus 20? Wait, is that 22? Should be. 12 plus 10 is 22. What's negative 6 plus 20? I. Plus 14. I. What's the real part? What's the imaginary part? Good. Okay? Anybody remember hearing the word conjugate? Do you remember hearing it? That's all I need to know. Does anybody have any idea what the conjugate is? Complex conjugate. Okay, similar concept. No, that's good. That's good. If you have 6 plus 2i, and I said I need you guys to give me the conjugate. The conjugate is when a complex number is written in standard form, which means the real part's first, imaginary part second. You change the sign in the middle. So the conjugate of 6 plus 2i is what?
2i minus 6.
No, you just change the sign in the middle.
6 minus 2i.
6 minus 2i. Good. So 6 minus 2i.
So basically the opposite.
Kind of. It's just the sign in the middle. Like if you have negative 2 minus 3i. So then what is the conjugate? Negative 2 plus 3i. When it's written in standard form, the only thing that you change is the sign that's in the middle. If it's negative, if the real part's negative, leave it negative. But you change the sign of the imaginary part. But here's the reason why. You're going to see why we did this in a second. But let's just FOIL this out. What's 6 times 6? Okay. What's 6 times negative 2i? Good. What's negative 2i and 6? Good. And then what's negative 2i, positive 2i? Negative 4i. Soon as I see I squared, what do I do? Cross it off, make this plus. So look at, where are my reals?
On the outside.
Good. So I have 36 and 4 is what? What happens to negative 12i and positive 12i? They cancel out. They're zeros. So what happens when you multiply a complex number by its conjugate? You get a real number. What crosses out? What goes away? The I is the imaginary. Same thing here. Let's look. These are complex conjugates. What's negative 2 and negative 2? Positive 4. What's negative 2 and positive 3i? Negative 6i. What's negative 3i and a negative 2? Plus 6i. What's negative 3i and positive 3i? Minus 9i squared. As soon as I see I squared, what do? Cross it off, change the sign in the front. So what are my reals? 9 and 4, which is? What happens to these two imaginaries? They cross out. We have to multiply by the conjugate in all situations when you're dividing. Okay, so look here, guys. If I am dividing, do you guys understand this is a division question? It's 3 plus 5i divided by 1 minus 2i. Are you allowed to have this? Is that allowed in math life? No. 0 cannot be where? In the denominator. Another rule that you guys are not allowed to break. What do you think cannot be in the denominator?
Negatives.
No, negatives are okay. I's. Can't have i's. So the reason we multiply by the conjugate is to get rid of what? The i's. You only use the denominator, guys, not the numerator. So if you want to write yourself a little note, I think it's a good idea. I'll write it down too. Multiply denominator and numerator by conjugate of denominator. Sounds difficult. It's not. Remember, in a fraction, what you do to the bottom, you do to the... Okay, so let's look at this. This is just two multiplication problems. I have a division sign. I need to get rid of the denominator. Think about where I cannot be. In the numerator or the denominator? Denominator. So focus on the denominator. What is the conjugate of the denominator? 1, God bless you, plus 2i. So if I multiply the bottom by that, what do I do to the top? The same thing. Perfect. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2i is plus 6i. 5i times 1 is plus 5i. And 5i times 2i is 10i squared. Do I see an I squared?
Yes.
Cross it off and change plus to
Negative.
minus. So here's my reals. 3 minus 10 is what? Negative 7. What's 6i plus 5i? Good. Are you allowed to have i's in the numerator? Absolutely. Now let's do the bottom. It's the exact same thing, it's just another multiplication problem. What's 1 times 1? 1. What's 1 times 2i? What's negative 2i times 1? Good. And then what's negative 2i and a positive 2i? Minus 4i squared. I see I squared, what do? Change negative 2. Here's my reals. 1 and 4. What's 1 plus 4? And then what happens in the middle? There's your answer. You have to multiply, when you're dividing, you have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. Because what is our goal? We want to get I where? Only on the top. Cannot have i's in the denominator. If you work this out and you either use the wrong sign or the wrong conjugate, maybe you did it of the numerator, you'll have i's in the bottom. You should be like, wait, that shouldn't be. Cannot have an I in the denominator. If you guys worked out a problem and it came out to be like negative 8 plus 16i over 2. What do you notice about 8, 16, and 2? They're all divisible by 2.
So divided by 2.
You'd have to simplify.
So you divide everything.
Yep, everything. So if I were you, I would do this. I would rewrite it as this. Whoops, not like that.
And we divide by positive 2 because that's a positive 2.
Uh-huh. Like this. So I have negative 4 plus what? 8i. What happens if you have, maybe you have, I don't know, negative 2 plus 3i over 4? You only do, look, if I separate this, good, Nadia. Can I simplify negative 2 over 4? Yeah, it's negative 1/2 and then just 3 over 4. But make sure you, if it only simplifies with 1, then just split them up and just do it with 1.
Okay, so if it, since the negative 4 plus 8i, can you simplify that still, or no? You just leave it like that?
Here,
Yeah.
that just stays.
Stay like that?
That's it.
Alright.
Alrighty then. Alright, so here we go. Again, not bad. No. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. All they're saying is when you have a square root when you have a negative underneath the square root, you got to take the I out. So watch. What is the square root of negative 1? I. That's your answer.
Oh wait, it's I, and then you put the number, how many the number is in there on top.
No, that's just a dot.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Well, for this one,
Yeah. Look at this.
I.
Look at this. For visual purposes, I would take the real part and the imaginary part, split them up. Do you guys know the square root of 3? No.
1.5.
Do you know, that's 3 divided by 2. Do you know the square root of negative 1? What is it? It's I. So I would write this as I on the outside, root 3. You have to take the negative out. Like here, 16, negative 1. What is the square root of 16? 4. What is the square root of negative 1? How come this isn't plus or minus? Some of you will ask.
Because you should multiply to get to the same answer you just had.
it's not a square. It's not a square.
It is a square. It is a perfect square. If I had this, x squared equals negative 16, I'd have to put the house on myself, so I get x equals plus or minus 4i. If the house is already there, see how it's already there? You don't need the plus or minus, just the positive. Right, do not let this problem scare you.
Oh, okay, that's it.
We're going to go through it nice and slow. There's a bunch of pieces to this problem. So let's just, first thing we're going to do is FOIL. A house times a house is a bigger house. Okay? If you have something inside a radical and something outside, that would be the same as this was an x and this was a 3. If I multiplied those two together, what would you tell me it is? 3x. So same thing. So watch. We're going to go through this slowly. What is the square root of 12 times the whole number 3? One's on the outside, one's on the inside. So what do? You just stick it together. 3 square root 12. So then I have the square root of 12 times the square root of negative 4. A house times a house just gives you a bigger house. What I mean by that is you can multiply those two numbers together. 12 and negative 4 is negative 48. If both things are outside, multiply them. If both things are inside, multiply them. If one's in, one's out, stick them together. So now I have negative root 3 times 3. Perfect. 3 root negative 3. Good. And then I have negative minus, what's negative 3 times negative 4? Positive 12. Good. Now, guys, your goal here is to simplify. Right? I have a radical 12, a radical 48, and a radical 3. What do you think the common radical is going to be? 3. So just take your time. Let's go through this. I can break down 12 into the square root of what and what? 4 and 3. Good. I can break down the square root of 48. 16 and 3. And then I also have to take out that negative 1, right? Minus 3. Can I break down the square root of 3?
So you don't break down the 16?
We will in a second. I have to take out the I, right? And then what we already broke down 12 into what? 4 and 3. So as we go through and simplify, guys, any perfect square you take out. So I have a 3 here. What is the square root of 4? 2. So these are both on the outside now, right? Multiply them. What's 3 times 2? So I have 6 root 3. I come over here. What's the square root of 16? 4. Do you guys have the square root of 3? No. What's the square root of I? Sorry, square root of negative 1? I. So this becomes plus 4i root 3. Now I scoot over. Do you guys know the square root of 3? No. Do you know the square root of negative 1? I. So this becomes minus 3i root 3. And then I scoot over here. Minus. What can I take out? 2. So this is 2 root 3. What do you notice about what we have left over?
A bunch of 3s.
There's a bunch of root 3s. Good. What else do you notice? Well, not even that, but if we're going to combine like terms, real goes with and imaginary with. Do you guys see the 2 reals and the 2 imaginaries? Yeah. How do you know the difference? Right. They have the I. So I have a 6 root 3 minus 2 root 3. So if I have 6 root 3s and I take 2 away, how many do I have total? Good. So 4 root 3. And if I have a positive 4i and a negative 3i, what's 4 minus 3? 1. So I'm left with I root 3. That problem is not as hard as it first appeared. Huh? Thank you. That's a plus sign. Okay. 2 more. Yeah, it's just long. Solve this. Somebody first period said, oh, that's x plus 3x minus 3. Is it?
No.
That would be the difference of perfect squares. Is this the difference? No. So if I'm going to get x by itself, I'm going to move 9 over. So I have x squared equals negative 9. Well, how do I find the square root of... Okay. If I square root one side, I square root the other. If I physically put the square root on, what goes in front of my answer?
Plus or minus.
And what is the square root of negative 9? 3i. Good. Square root of a negative number is imaginary. We've already done this. Is everything on the correct side?
Yes.
Okay. What's my A? What's my B? What's my C?
1, 4, 5.
Okay. For the most part, guys, I was very impressed at your quizzes. You guys did pretty well on this part. So it's negative 4 plus minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times 1. Check to make sure we put everything in right. Did we?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just simplify. I have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of, what's 4 squared? Minus what? Good. All over 2. So I have negative 4 plus or minus, what's 16 minus 20? Good. What do you see as the problem here? The negative underneath the square root. What's my answer for that? 2i. So I have negative 4 plus or minus 2i over 2. And then I say, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I'm done. Am I done?
You gotta simplify by 2.
If you need to look at it like this, then separate it and do that. What's negative 4 divided by 2? Negative 2 plus, what's 2 divided by 2? So just 1i. Good. Very good. Mm-hmm.
Since it's plus or minus 2y, the real answer would be 2 plus I over 2 minus I?
Correct. Good.
Yeah,
Yep.
you can do that.
Yes. We'll not even worry about this one. No, the numbers are going to be gigantic, and I'm not going to give you guys calculators. So, you have homework. I want you to work on your homework now. I'm giving you time in class, so you have any questions, I'll show you it in a second. Okay, good, so get going. But you guys have a test on Thursday over 1-1, which is solving equations, 1-3, which is the quadratic stuff in your quiz, and then what we did today. So tomorrow I'll give back the quizzes, I'll go over the homework, and then on Wednesday I'll answer any questions you guys have. Sound good?